The galaxy was ancient. Across countless star systems, civilizations had risen, spread, and built empires long before humanity had even learned to use fire. Great alliances had been formed, wars had been fought, and peace had returned many times in the history of the stars. To the rest of the galaxy, humanity was new, almost like a child stumbling into a hall filled with powerful rulers. At first, humans were ignored. Their homeworld, Earth, was seen as a small blue planet in a quiet arm of the Milky Way. The great powers of the galaxy looked at humanity with mild interest, then quickly dismissed them. To most alien leaders, Earth was just another world with no real influence, but humanity was not weak. By the time they built ships capable of faster-than-light travel, they had already passed through centuries of wars, disasters, and challenges on their own planet. They had learned how to adapt, survive, and rebuild from nothing. When humanity finally reached the stars, they were filled with excitement, curiosity, and determination. At first, contact with alien civilizations seemed promising. Human diplomats tried to show respect, their explorers tried to learn from others, and their traders hoped to exchange goods fairly. Many smaller alien races welcomed humanity, curious about these new arrivals. But the galaxy was not just full of friends, it was also full of predators. Among those predators was the Zorath Dominion. The Zorath were one of the most feared empires in the galaxy. Their fleet stretched across hundreds of systems, their armies had crushed many civilizations, and their rulers demanded obedience from all. For centuries they had ruled by fear. Species that resisted were enslaved. Those that surrendered were forced to pay heavy tribute. When the Zorath first learned about humanity, they did not feel threatened. Instead, they saw an opportunity. Earth was rich with resources, and humans were spreading quickly to nearby stars. The Dominion believed that if they acted quickly, they could control humanity before this young species became too strong. So the Dominion sent an ultimatum. A massive fleet arrived at the edge of human space. The alien commander transmitted a message that was broadcast not only to Earth but to every human colony across the stars. The message was simple. Humans, you will surrender your fleets, your colonies, and your independence. From this day forward, you belong to the Zorath Dominion. Refuse, and you will be destroyed. The Galactic Council, an assembly of different alien powers that claimed to represent fairness and peace, watched silently. Many of its members had already bent to the Dominion's demands in the past. They expected humans to do the same. To them, surrender was natural. Resistance was foolish. But the humans did not answer with surrender. On Earth, leaders from every nation gathered. For once, old divisions were set aside. The threat was too great. They knew what the Dominion had done to others. Planets turned into prisons, populations forced into slavery, cultures erased. Humanity faced a choice: kneel and lose everything, or fight and risk extinction. The decision was made quickly. Humanity would not kneel. When the Dominion fleet advanced on the first human colony, they expected the defenders to surrender or scatter. Instead, they found resistance waiting. Civilian engineers had turned mining ships into makeshift war vessels. Orbital stations had been armed with railguns. Fighters launched in swarms piloted by men and women who knew they might not return. The battle was brutal. Human ships were smaller, weaker, and less advanced. Many were destroyed in the opening waves. But the Dominion quickly realized that these humans were not like the enemies they had crushed before. Where another species would have fled, the humans fought until the last ship. Where most armies would have surrendered, the humans detonated their reactors to take Dominion cruisers down with them. Even as the colony burned, survivors regrouped, built new defenses, and prepared for the next attack. The Dominion commander reported back to his rulers with irritation. The humans were undisciplined and reckless, he said. They wasted ships, they risked lives, and they fought in ways that made no logical sense. But despite their losses, they refused to break. Every time the Dominion advanced, humanity found a way to strike back. Word spread quickly across the galaxy. Neutral alien traders carried stories of human resistance. Other species, many of whom had suffered under the Dominion's rule, listened with awe. They had been taught to fear the Dominion, to accept defeat before even trying to fight. Yet here was a young species, barely out of its cradle, standing against the most feared empire in the stars. In the halls of the Galactic Council, some laughed at humanity. They called the humans foolish, too proud to know when they were beaten. But others began to worry. They remembered how fast humanity had grown, how quickly they had adapted to space travel. If humans could stand against the Dominion now, what might they become in a century? Meanwhile, among the human colonies, determination only grew. Families who had lost loved ones to the first battles did not call for surrender. They called for revenge. Engineers worked day and night to improve ships. Soldiers trained harder. Civilians volunteered to help in any way they could. Humanity was not only fighting for survival, they were fighting for freedom. The Dominion launched another attack, this time with twice as many ships. Again, they expected a quick victory. Again, humanity resisted. The battles dragged on for days. Space became filled with wreckage, broken hulls, and drifting debris. Human losses were heavy, but every Dominion ship destroyed was celebrated like a victory for the entire species. The Dominion commanders began to feel something they had not felt in centuries: doubt. They had crushed dozens of civilizations before, but none had resisted like this. None had fought with such relentless determination. And in the shadows of the galaxy, whispers began. Some aliens said the humans were mad. Others said they were dangerous. A few began to hope that maybe, just maybe, this strange new species could do what no one else had done, stand against the Dominion and survive. For humanity, the war had only just begun. But already the galaxy was watching. Already the name human was starting to carry weight. Not as weak newcomers, but as fighters who would never kneel. And as the Dominion prepared its next assault, humanity prepared as well. They knew the enemy was stronger. They knew the cost would be great. But deep inside, every human shared the same thought: better to die free than to live as slaves. The spark had been lit, and soon the galaxy would tremble. The war was no longer a secret. Across the stars, every major civilization now knew that the Zorath Dominion had declared war on humanity. The Dominion had expected to end the conflict in days. They had expected Earth to surrender quickly like so many others before. But days turned to weeks and weeks turned to months, and humanity was still fighting. The Dominion was furious. Their first fleets had been slowed, damaged, and humiliated by a species they considered weak. The rulers of the Dominion could not allow this embarrassment to continue. If humanity resisted and survived, then other subject races might believe they could resist too. That was dangerous. That was unacceptable. So the Dominion prepared a much larger assault. They gathered fleets from every corner of their empire, thousands of warships, carriers, and cruisers. Their goal was not only to crush Earth's defenses, but to make an example of humanity. They wanted the galaxy to see the destruction and remember that no one could defy the Dominion. When the news reached Earth, fear spread. Many human colonies were already under attack. Some had been destroyed. Families mourned, and soldiers carried scars from brutal battles. Humanity's technology was still behind that of the Dominion. Their fleets were smaller, their weapons weaker. On paper, the war looked hopeless, but humanity refused to give up. Instead of surrendering, Earth united more strongly than ever before. Engineers worked day and night to improve ships. Scientists studied every captured piece of alien technology. Military leaders shared strategies openly, no longer divided by nations or borders. Humanity had one cause now: survival. More importantly, humanity changed the way the war was fought. The Dominion expected traditional battles, fleet against fleet, with overwhelming firepower deciding the victor. But humanity refused to play by those rules. They studied their enemy, found weaknesses, and adapted quickly. In asteroid fields, human ships hid among the rocks, waiting silently. When Dominion fleets passed through, the humans struck like hunters, using the asteroids as cover. Dominion commanders used to open fights struggled to respond. In gas giants, humans lured Dominion ships into storms filled with lightning and pressure. Dominion sensors were confused. their targeting systems blinded. Human ships moved through the chaos as if it were natural, striking at weak points before vanishing again. On barren moons, human soldiers set traps. They hacked into enemy communication networks, turning the Dominion's own signals against them. They placed explosives where enemy ships landed. They attacked supply lines instead of charging directly at strongholds. The Dominion was shocked. To them, these tactics were dishonorable, reckless, even suicidal. But to humanity, they were clever, necessary, and effective. Every victory, no matter how small, inspired others. Every loss taught humanity a lesson for the next fight. Alien observers began to notice. Merchants, wanderers, and spies carried stories of humanity's battles to other parts of the galaxy. Some described humans as reckless fools. Others called them dangerous warriors. And some whispered with hope that maybe, just maybe, the Dominion could be defeated. Still, the cost for humanity was high. Ships were lost. Colonies burned. Families were separated. Yet even in grief, humanity's spirit did not break. On Earth and across the colonies, people repeated the same phrase: "We will never kneel." There was one battle in particular that changed how the galaxy viewed humanity. The Dominion launched a massive attack on the colony world of Ardent Reach. The planet was young, barely settled, with only a few cities and defensive stations. The Dominion sent an entire fleet, confident that the colony would fall in hours. But the humans were ready. Civilians had armed their ships with weapons. Farmers had been trained to fight. Old satellites had been refitted with cannons. Every man, woman, and child had prepared for the worst. When the Dominion fleet arrived, they faced resistance far stronger than expected. The battle lasted 5 days. Human ships darted in and out of range, targeting Dominion supply vessels first. Ground forces used tunnels and caves to launch ambushes. The planet's defenders knew they would likely be destroyed, but they refused to surrender. In the end, Ardent Reach was burned, but not before destroying nearly half the Dominion fleet that had attacked it. The sacrifice stunned the galaxy. It was not the size of the victory that mattered, it was the message. Humanity would fight to the last breath no matter the odds. After Ardent Reach, alien species began to fear humans in a new way. Not because they were the strongest, but because they were impossible to break. The Dominion's power was built on fear and obedience, but humanity showed that fear could be resisted. The Dominion grew desperate. They increased their attacks, sending more fleets, more troops, more weapons. But with every strike, they lost more than they expected. Humanity always found a way to fight back. Even in defeat, humans were dangerous. When a colony fell, survivors often sabotaged the land, poisoning water supplies and destroying factories so the Dominion could not use them. When human ships were captured, crews self-destructed rather than be taken alive. Dominion commanders began to dread facing humans, knowing that victory would always come at a cost. Among the Galactic Council, debates grew heated. Some members demanded action, fearing that if humanity somehow defeated the Dominion, the balance of power in the galaxy would change forever. Others argued that humanity was only defending itself and that the Dominion had provoked the war. But no one dared to intervene directly. For now, the galaxy chose to watch, and as they watched, they whispered. They whispered about a species that had been underestimated, a species that had only just stepped into the stars yet was already shaking the foundations of the galaxy. They whispered about humanity, and humanity kept fighting. The war was far from over. The Dominion was still stronger, still richer, still older. But humanity had something the Dominion did not, an unyielding resolve. They would not give up no matter the cost. They would fight until their last ship was gone, their last soldier had fallen, their last world had burned. And in that determination, the galaxy began to see something new. A storm was coming. A storm called humanity. The war had changed the galaxy. At the beginning, humanity had been ignored, mocked as a new species that did not understand the weight of the stars. But now, after countless battles and unexpected victories, the galaxy no longer laughed. Humanity had become a storm that grew stronger with every strike. The Zorath Dominion, once feared across hundreds of worlds, was now struggling. Their fleets were still massive, their armies still powerful, but their fearsome reputation was crumbling. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled with terror, but humanity had shown that the mighty empire could bleed. That truth spread across every corner of the galaxy. And so the Dominion struck back harder than ever before. They launched a campaign unlike any seen before. Entire sectors burned as Dominion fleets tried to stamp out humanity's growing influence. Planets that whispered of rebellion were bombed from orbit. Neutral traders who helped humans were captured or destroyed. The Dominion wanted the galaxy to remember their power, to remember the fear. But humanity did not break. Even in the face of this brutality, humans fought on. Every destroyed colony became a rallying cry. Every loss fueled a greater determination. Soldiers swore that they would honor the fallen by fighting harder. Engineers rebuilt weapons from wreckage. Civilians refused to surrender their spirit even when their cities lay in ruins. The battles grew larger, bloodier, and longer. The siege of Calros Prime lasted nearly 3 weeks. The Dominion sent wave after wave of warships pounding the planet's defenses with endless fire. Human forces fought desperately, their shields cracking, their fleets shattered. For a moment, it seemed the planet would fall. But humanity had learned to turn desperation into strength. Hidden beneath Calros Prime's oceans were massive cannons built in secret from old mining rigs. When the Dominion moved their largest battleships into low orbit, the cannons fired. 2 of the Dominion's greatest ships were destroyed in an instant, their wreckage falling into the atmosphere like burning meteors. The humans roared with victory, even as the battle raged on. The Dominion eventually withdrew, leaving Calros Prime scarred but unbroken. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity could not be crushed. Other battles were even more brutal. At the Battle of the Silent Void, human fleets faced one of the Dominion's most terrifying weapons, a supercarrier that carried thousands of drone fighters. For days, the sky was filled with endless swarms of machines. Human pilots fought until their ships were torn apart, until their weapons overheated, until they had nothing left. Still, they refused to retreat. In the end, humanity sacrificed half their fleet to lure the supercarrier into a trap. They detonated fuel-rich asteroids around it, creating a firestorm that consumed the massive vessel. The cost was terrible, but the sight of the Dominion's pride destroyed filled human hearts with unshakable courage. Alien observers, watching from afar, struggled to understand. To them, humans seemed reckless, even insane. They fought in battles they should have lost. They sacrificed fleets that no other species would dare to risk. Yet somehow, again and again, humanity survived, and the Dominion paid a price with every clash. One alien commander, secretly reporting to his council, described it best. Humans are not like us. When we lose, we retreat. When they lose, they rise again. Every defeat makes them more dangerous. Every sacrifice makes them stronger. They are not fighting for territory. They are fighting for existence, and that makes them unstoppable. The Dominion's leaders were beginning to see the same truth. Their fleets were being stretched thin. Their supply lines were under constant attack. Uprisings were spreading across their empire, inspired by human defiance. Worlds that had once obeyed in silence were now daring to resist. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion felt the ground shake beneath them. But instead of pulling back, they chose greater violence. The Dominion turned entire planets into battlegrounds. Cities were reduced to rubble. Space lanes were clogged with the wreckage of ships. Whole systems became graveyards of war. The brutality shocked the galaxy, yet it also revealed something even more terrifying: humanity's response. Where others saw ruin, humans saw challenge. Where others would surrender, humans rebuilt. On worlds that had been burned, survivors dug shelters and kept fighting. On ships that were crippled, crews repaired weapons with scraps and rejoined the battle. Even children and elders joined the struggle, carrying supplies, building defenses, or sending signals to warn of Dominion attacks. Humanity as a whole became an army. It was no longer just soldiers against soldiers. It was species against empire. And humanity's message was spreading far beyond their own kind. Oppressed species began to rise more boldly. On distant worlds, slaves sabotaged factories. On frontier planets, workers overthrew Dominion overseers. Entire systems declared rebellion, inspired by human defiance. The Dominion sent troops to crush them, but every soldier sent to fight uprisings was one less soldier to fight humanity. The empire was being stretched from all sides. Still, the price for humanity was terrible. Millions of lives were lost. Colonies were scarred forever. Entire fleets were reduced to ashes. But humanity carried on. They carried their pain like a banner, a reminder of why they fought. And with each loss, their determination only deepened. By the time the Battle of Arcturus Nebula ended, the galaxy was trembling. Human fleets had fought Dominion war machines so powerful that entire civilizations had once surrendered at the sight of them. Yet humanity had destroyed them piece by piece with strategy, sacrifice, and willpower. The war was no longer a quiet conflict at the edges of space. It had become the center of galactic attention. Every species, whether ally, enemy, or neutral, was watching closely. Some feared what humanity might become if they truly defeated the Dominion. Would they rise as liberators, or would they become conquerors themselves? Others prayed that humanity would succeed. For if the Dominion could fall, then perhaps freedom was possible for all. But no matter what anyone believed, one truth was now impossible to deny. The galaxy had never seen a war like this, and at the heart of it was humanity, a young species that refused to kneel. Their brutality was not mindless. It was the brutality of survival, of desperation, of unbreakable will, and as the stars echoed with the clash of fleets and the cries of battle, the galaxy began to tremble, not just at the Dominion, but at the name of humanity itself. The war had already lasted longer than anyone in the galaxy expected. The Zorath Dominion, feared for centuries, was supposed to crush humanity in a matter of weeks. Yet months had passed and the humans were still fighting. Not only fighting, they were learning, adapting, and striking back. For the Dominion, this was no longer about resources or conquest. It was about pride. The rulers of the Dominion had never been humiliated like this. To them, humanity was a young race from a small planet, barely worthy of attention. But now this young race had become a thorn in their side, and the galaxy was watching. If the Dominion failed to crush humanity, their reputation of fear would weaken. So the Dominion decided to end the war with overwhelming force. They gathered some of their most advanced war machines, weapons designed to terrify entire civilizations, colossal battleships that carried enough firepower to burn planets, bioengineered war beasts that could survive in any environment, entire fleets of drones controlled by powerful AIs. They had used these tools before to silence rebellions in hours. Now they would use them against humanity. The galaxy held its breath. Many believed this would be the end. No species had ever stood against the Dominion's full might, but humanity did not surrender. On Earth and across the colonies, leaders, scientists, and soldiers worked together with one thought. If the Dominion wants to bring everything against us, then we must give everything we have in return. Human engineers turned desperation into invention. Mining lasers were converted into planetary defense cannons, powerful enough to pierce Dominion shields. Old satellites were repurposed into mobile mines, floating traps in space. Experimental AI programs, once too unstable to use, were unleashed to guide swarms of drones. Even civilian ships were fitted with weapons, ready to fight if needed. But it was not only the weapons that gave humanity strength, it was their creativity. Where the Dominion relied on brute force, humanity used cunning. Dominion commanders expected predictable battles. Humanity gave them chaos. When a massive Dominion battleship entered orbit around a colony, human forces did not attack it directly. Instead, they targeted its supply lines, leaving it stranded without fuel. When Dominion drones swarmed a battlefield, human hackers broke into their systems, turning some of the machines against their own masters. When war beasts were released on a planet, human soldiers set traps using terrain, explosives, and clever ambushes. Every battle was costly, but every battle taught humanity more. The first real turning point came during the Battle of Helios Rift. The Dominion sent an enormous fleet through a narrow passage of stars, planning to strike Earth directly. They were confident this attack would break humanity once and for all. But the humans had studied the rift carefully. They had mapped every asteroid, every gravity well, every unstable star in the region. When the Dominion entered, humanity was waiting. Hidden mines exploded, tearing apart the front of the fleet. Human ships darted from behind asteroids, striking and retreating before the Dominion could respond. Gravity traps pulled Dominion cruisers into the path of collapsing stars. The battle lasted 7 days, and when it ended, nearly half the Dominion fleet was gone. For the first time in galactic history, the Dominion had been defeated in open combat. The galaxy was stunned. Species who had lived in fear for generations now whispered in awe. Could humanity actually do what no one else had done? Could they defeat the Dominion? The news spread far beyond the battlefield. On worlds enslaved by the Dominion, hope flickered. Small uprisings began in secret. Enslaved races sabotaged factories, delayed supply shipments, and spread rumors of human victories. For the first time, they believed freedom might be possible. The Dominion tried to hide their losses, but the truth was impossible to contain. Too many witnesses had seen their fleets destroyed. Too many traders had carried stories across the stars. The name human was becoming more than just a word. It was becoming a symbol. Inside the Dominion's High Council, fear began to grow. The rulers argued among themselves. Some demanded that more fleets be sent, that humanity be crushed no matter the cost. Others warned that the more they fought, the more they weakened their own empire. If other species rose up while the Dominion was distracted, their power could crumble. But pride ruled stronger than caution. The Dominion could not allow a young species to humiliate them. So they gathered even greater forces for the next assault. Humanity knew this too. They could not relax. Every victory was followed by new preparations. Factories worked without rest. Scientists developed new weapons at incredible speed. Colonists volunteered for training, ready to defend their homes. Humanity was not only fighting for survival, they were fighting for respect, and they were no longer satisfied with just defending. After the Battle of Helios Rift, human leaders realized something important. They did not have to wait for the Dominion to attack. They could strike back. Small fleets of human warships began to push beyond their own borders. They attacked lightly guarded Dominion outposts, destroyed supply depots, and freed prisoners. Every strike was fast and unexpected. By the time the Dominion reacted, the humans were already gone. One by one, enslaved colonies heard the same message. You are not alone. Humanity fights for freedom. Rise with us, some colonies did. Others waited, afraid of punishment. But the seeds of rebellion were spreading, and the Dominion could not stop them all. As humanity pushed outward, they also gained allies. At first, no species dared to openly join the war, but many offered quiet help. Traders smuggled supplies, scientists shared old technologies, refugees from Dominion worlds volunteered to fight alongside human soldiers. It was not much, but it was enough. Humanity was no longer completely alone. The war was changing. The Dominion, once unstoppable, was now bleeding. Humanity, once dismissed, was now feared. And across the galaxy, people were watching closely. Some hoped that humanity would succeed, bringing an end to centuries of tyranny. Others feared that if humanity could defeat the Dominion, then they would become the next great power to fear. But no matter what others thought, one truth was clear. The tide of the war had turned. Humanity was no longer simply defending itself. Humanity was advancing, and the galaxy had never seen anything like it. The galaxy had never known such a war. For generations, the Zorath Dominion had ruled with terror. Worlds had surrendered without a fight. Empires had bowed to their will, and the Galactic Council had remained silent. The Dominion seemed eternal, too vast and too cruel to ever be challenged. But then came humanity. From the moment they refused to kneel, everything changed. What began as a small rebellion became a storm that swept across the stars. Humanity's determination, their courage, and their refusal to break had forced the galaxy to see them in a new light. And now, after years of endless battle, the war had reached its final stage. The Dominion was weakening. Its fleets, once countless, were scattered. Its armies, once feared, were exhausted. Its slaves, once silent, had risen in revolt. Everywhere the Dominion looked, there was resistance. And at the center of it all stood humanity, the spark that had set the galaxy ablaze. The human fleet was larger than it had ever been. Built from the wreckage of old battles, strengthened by new designs, and supported by rebel allies, it stretched across the stars. They were no longer fighting only to survive. They were fighting to end the Dominion once and for all. The final campaign began with the assault on the core worlds. The Dominion had fortified its heart with massive defenses, fortress stations, endless drone fleets, and colossal warships. For centuries, no enemy had ever reached this far. The Dominion believed that even if every outer world burned, the core would remain unshaken. But humanity was not like any enemy they had faced before. The first battle raged in the Orcs expanse, a system filled with plasma storms that could tear ships apart. The Dominion used the storms as shields, hiding their fleets inside. But human navigators, trained through countless battles, used the chaos to their advantage. They slipped through storms, striking at blind angles, turning the Dominion's stronghold into a graveyard of wreckage. Next came the siege of Valar Prime, one of the Dominion's oldest worlds. The planet was guarded by fortress rings bristling with weapons, enough to destroy any fleet that dared approach. The humans did not rush forward. Instead, they cut off supplies, attacked in waves, and hacked into the ring's old systems. After weeks of fighting, the fortress cannons turned against each other, leaving the planet defenseless. Each victory pushed the humans closer to the Dominion's throne world, and with each victory, more enslaved worlds rose in rebellion. The Dominion was collapsing and the galaxy could feel it. But the war was not over. The Dominion gathered everything they had left for the final defense. Entire fleets of their most advanced ships, generals who had fought for centuries, weapons so powerful that even the Galactic Council trembled at the thought of them. The last battle began in the skies above Zorath Prime, the heart of the Empire. Human ships faced walls of fire, drones, and superweapons. For days, the battle consumed the heavens. Cruisers burned, carriers split apart, and debris rained down like falling stars. The Dominion fought with desperation, knowing their rule was at stake. Humanity fought with fury, knowing their freedom was within reach. It was a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Human fleets pushed forward with strategies the Dominion could not predict. Suicide runs crippled their largest ships. Swarms of drones guided by human AIs overwhelmed enemy defenses. Planetary cannons, built in secret by rebels on Zorath Prime itself, opened fire on their own overlords. The Dominion fought bravely, but their spirit was gone. Their soldiers saw rebellion spreading across the Empire. Their commanders saw their fleets falling apart. Their rulers saw fear in the eyes of their people, and finally, when the human flagship reached orbit, the Dominion surrendered. It was not a quiet surrender. It was broadcast across the galaxy, forced by human signals so that every world could see. The rulers of the Dominion, once arrogant and proud, were shown bowing their heads in defeat. Humanity had not only won, they had made sure the galaxy would never forget. When the war ended, silence fell. For a long time, no one spoke. No one dared to move. The galaxy had never seen the Dominion fall, and they did not know what would come next. Would humanity become conquerors? Would they build their own empire? Would they demand tribute from the stars? But humanity did not claim the galaxy. They did not ask for slaves or riches. They asked only for peace, for freedom, and for respect. They declared that no species should ever live under chains, and that the age of fear was over. Many did not believe them at first. Many still trembled when they heard the word human. They remembered the brutal battles, the relentless spirit, the terrifying will to survive. The galaxy had never seen such a war, and the memory of it would last for centuries. But slowly the truth became clear. Humanity had not fought to conquer. They had fought to live. And in their struggle, they had become something far greater than they had ever imagined. The Galactic Council, once dismissive, now bent carefully toward humanity. Their voices were soft, their offers filled with respect, even fear. No one dared to threaten Earth again. The enslaved races of the Dominion sang humanity's name as a symbol of hope. To them, humans were not just warriors. They were liberators, proof that no empire was eternal. The surviving rulers of other empires whispered warnings to their heirs. Do not provoke humanity. Do not test them. Remember what they did to the Dominion. And so across the galaxy, humanity's name became legend. It was a name spoken with awe by the weak, with respect by the free, and with fear by the powerful. Humanity had begun as newcomers, dismissed as fragile and unimportant, but after a war so brutal that it shook the stars, they had carved their place in history forever. The galaxy would never forget the message humanity had written in fire and sacrifice. We will never kneel. From that day forward, whenever humanity's name was spoken, the galaxy trembled, not because they sought domination, but because they had shown the universe what a young, unbreakable species could do when pushed to the edge. And so the war ended. But the legend began. A legend of humans, the storm that rose from a small blue world, fought the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known, and proved that even the smallest spark could set the stars ablaze.